Ladies and gentlemen, Tesla stock today up 5.37% in regular trading. At the time of recording this video, up another 1% in after hours. The S&P up 1.55% today, up another roughly half a 1% in after hours. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give you all of the news and the headlines that you need to know that are causing or is causing this large move higher in after hours. I feel like we're all kind of jaded now for these big moves, but the S&P up a half 1% is a pretty big move, and there could be some headlines to explain this. Now, I want to tell you, before we get into any of this, something big is coming for markets, and it's going to be very positive for Tesla specifically, and I'll let you know exactly what that is, in my opinion, in this video. So stay tuned. Trust me, you do not want to miss it. We will also discuss where I think Tesla stock is going next in light of what I think is coming next in markets. And this could happen pretty soon. Now, last night, there was an apparent leak of a private conversation between JP Morgan at a conference and U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, where Bessent talked about U.S. and China relations, calling the situation unsustainable. The last time we had this, if you recall, was when? Right here. On April 8th, April 9th, right? Where you had that news, that rumor, if you will, that there was going to be a pause on all tariffs, excluding China, okay? The White House came out within 30 minutes and said that's not true. The next day, at about 1 p.m. or so, Eastern Standard Time, the White House announced the exact news they said was false the day before. This is seeming like a pattern at this point. You kind of, quote unquote, leak news, see how the markets respond to it, and then confirm the news. Okay. I think a short-term solution is going to be worked out with China soon. Now, what I mean by this is probably just a pause. Probably a 60-day pause, 90-day pause or so, to work on a deal, kind of that first step towards actually making a deal. This, I think, is going to be massive for the stock market because like we had in 2018, S&P fell 20% on US-China trade war. But what happened is the markets actually bottomed on Christmas Eve when the two sides decided to negotiate. It wasn't when the deal was done. It was when they decided to negotiate. Well, I don't think you're going to V-shape recovery to new all-time highs like in that instance. We need to see how the economy evolves, and there's questions around that. Is the damage already done? We don't know. That's kind of why stocks are, trading still down over 10%. But you could see 5-8% rally from here. Relatively easy if we do get some good China headlines. Now, again, I don't know when this news is going to come, but it does seem like very soon. I think, honestly, it could come any minute, any hour from now. Could come tonight, could come by this Friday, could come tomorrow. Not exactly sure the exact timeline on this, but I think that's what a lot of big money's starting to position for. Obviously, markets are off of the lows by roughly 10% or so, right? You're still down like 10% roughly from all-time highs. Still down like 12.5% from all-time highs. So there is quite a bit of room to rally on that good news. Although I don't think you'd go back to new all-time highs, I do think it's coming. And I do think that news could easily cause a 5 to 8% rally in markets. We'll talk about this a little bit more towards the end of the video when we discuss what this could do for Tesla. But first, we do have earnings and more headlines that are coming out here in after hours. Adidas Q1 sales came in at 6.15 billion euros, operating profit 610 million euros, operating margin at 9.9%, gross margin at 52.1%. It does look like these were better than expected numbers across the board, so that's good. The French central bank chief Francis Villeroy said the United States could dip into recession on the fallout from a global trade war, but everyone will suffer, including the Eurozone, even if to a lesser effect. Canada's Prime Minister Carney says, I'm looking for comprehensive discussions with Trump. He says that he prefers a Trump meeting to be face-to-face. So this does seem like a positive development. The market on close imbalance today was also worth mentioning. Now, what the market on close imbalance is the last 10 minutes of essentially orders that are booked to close by the end of the day. So S&P 500 had $2.33 billion of market on close imbalance to the positive side. NASDAQ 100 had $1.55 billion to the positive. The Dow Jones had 757.3 million to the positive, and the Mag 7 had 523.8 million to the positive. So it looks like hedge funds and institutions are positioning very, bullishly for tomorrow, for the rest of this week. These are much larger numbers than you normally see on a market on close imbalance. Also in the news coming out at 4 p.m. today, Trump could sign an order as soon as Wednesday to improve job training for trades, says the White House summary. And this is the news that is most likely causing markets to move higher here in after hours. Trump to exempt car makers from some U.S. tariffs, so showing more of that flexibility. And if he's going to exempt some car makers, then it's probably going to exempt other companies as well. And that's probably the thinking behind why even other stocks, not just car makers, are moving higher. But again, this is specifically good for Tesla, although we don't have many details on this. It is a positive for Tesla. Now, we did have a bunch of earnings today in after hours as well. Texas Instruments Q1 EPS came in at $1.28 versus $1.07 as was the estimate. Revenue at $4.07 billion versus $3.91 billion as the estimate. Net income at $1.18 billion. Cash flow $849 million. Sees Q2 EPS $1.21 to $1.47. Revenue between $4.17 billion and $4.53 billion. So that was pretty much a beat across the board. Las Vegas Sands missed on revenue. Revenue came in at $2.86 billion. The estimate was $2.91 billion. Operating profit at $609 million versus $682.3 million estimate. Net income $408 million. Pre-tax profit $471 million, and capex at $379 million. So this was a miss, but not bad, right? A lot of stocks are priced for like a really bad earnings. Even if you miss, you can still do well if it's not as bad as expected. And I think that's generally kind of where we are right now in this market. Even if companies are missing by a little bit, that's almost like a beat if your stock is beaten down heading into that earnings, right? Not technically a beat, but that's kind of how it's treated. Like it could have been worse kind of mentality. Now, Lam Research Q3 revenue came in at $4.72 billion, higher than the $4.65 billion estimate. Adjusted gross margin at 49%. Sees Q4 revenue $5 billion plus or minus $300 million. Lam Research, one of those AI stocks, not necessarily a chip maker, but provides some of the equipment for chip makers. So that's definitely seen as a positive development for the AI sector. IBM also beat estimates with EPS coming in at $1.60 versus estimates of $1.42. Revenue coming in at $14.54 billion versus estimates of $14.4 billion. So again, another beat on earnings. And right now, if you continue to get these kind of beats, we're going to get through this earnings season and say, maybe it's not nearly as bad as we thought it was as far as the economy, the consumer, and corporate America. But Chipotle missed estimates. Revenue came in at $2.88 billion. They missed the $2.95 billion estimate. Net income at $386.6 million. EPS at 28 cents. Operating expenses at $2.4 billion, and operating margin at 16.7%. Discover Financial Services reports first quarter 2025 net income of $1.1 billion or $4.25 per diluted share. Net interest income came in at $3.558 billion. Q1 credit loss provision of $1.24 $4 billion. So that does look like a beat as well, although that credit loss provision number is moving higher, which is not a great sign for the consumer. Southwest Airlines Q1 revenue in line with estimates at $6.4 billion, adjusted EPS at negative 13 cents versus negative 18 cents as was the estimate. Adjusted net loss $77 million versus $108 million expected. GAAP EPS at negative 26 cents. Net loss $149 million. So even though those numbers look bad, that was still pretty much a beat. Donald Trump is reportedly considering increasing taxes on Americans who make over $1 million a year, according to the Washington Post. And the White House says this about the EU fine on Meta and Apple. They say, novel form of economic extortion will not be tolerated. Now, tomorrow morning is the big day as far as economic data is concerned. Durable goods orders month over month for March. We need a good number here. Without a good number here, some of those recession concerns are going to come roaring right back. You're expecting a 2% positive number. Last month was positive 0.9%. So you're expecting a really strong number there. Chicago Fed National Activity Index expected at 0.11%. Durable goods orders excluding transportation expected to be on the weak side. So if that comes in strong, that'll be good. You're expecting 0.2%. Last month was 0.7%. Initial jobless claims expected at 221,000 versus last week at 215,000. Existing home sales will also be coming out. Kansas Fed Composite Index, Manufacturing Index. You do have a 7-year bond auction as well. That's like the longer end of the curve. So Wall Street will be looking to see how demand comes in for treasuries. You also have a speech from Fed Kashkari tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time that could, again, move markets. But lately, it's all about what Powell has to say, not really what, regional Fed officials are saying. Again, Tesla stock up 1% in after hours, probably due to the whole auto tariff exemption news. That's giving Tesla a larger boost than the broader markets, although broader markets also moving higher on this. Again, back to what I said at the start of this video, something big is coming for the markets. You can almost feel it at this point that we're making progress with the things that Trump said, with the rumor that came out today. It's inevitable that we're going to get good news. Even what Hessen said, the trade advisor, over this weekend, he quote unquote predicted a flurry of trade activity this week. You haven't seen a lot of that. Now there's also some speculation that a trade deal could be announced with India or Japan soon, and that could obviously happen. That would be important, but it's really China that's the big one here, and people want to see a pause on China tariffs, and I think that is what is coming in the near-term future. Now, specifically for Tesla, as we talked about a little bit in the last video, like a lot of the issues that Tesla encounters that Wall Street assigns to Tesla are really not issues to begin with, right? Like brand damage and all of that nonsense that happens, okay? Different rumors here and there that move the stock that really never materialize into anything important. Well, there's one thing that is a risk to Tesla, and that is if the Chinese consumer starts to push back against American products. They've done this before. They did this to South Korea, to Japan, and specific products and brands were very damaged during those moments over the last couple of decades. If that were to happen today against Tesla or Starbucks or Nike, American companies, that would be a huge problem for Tesla, as China is the largest market. So the faster we do get a pause on these tariffs, we do get a trade deal worked out and the situation calms down a bit, specifically that risk starts to dramatically diminish, okay? So even though like the tariffs in and of themselves on China don't hurt Tesla nearly as much as other car companies, not even in the same bracket, if you will. From that perspective, GM or Ford, they don't have a presence in China like Tesla does, right? So Tesla's kind of in a unique position from that perspective. So I do think deal getting worked out with China, a pause getting worked out with China would be seen as a huge positive for Tesla. And I think over the next couple of weeks, if we do get a pause on these tariffs on China and things start to go in the right direction, Tesla could be a $300+ stock over the next couple of weeks. I would not rule that out at all at this point. I would be fully prepared for that to happen in the event that I am correct. And it's kind of just a feeling that I have, just trying to like connect the dots here. Seems like there's a clear sign that we're going to get some good China news here pretty soon. And when we get that, I mean, I think markets could rally 4 to 5% that day. I think Tesla could rally 10+% the day we get that news. Could be tomorrow, could be Friday, could be next week. You never really know when the actual headline's going to hit, but I do think it is soon. And again, when it does, you do not want to be short this market. Let me tell you that. So minus that, if we don't get any positive news, you want to watch that 250 level for Tesla, see if that holds support. And if it does, well, we should be able to work our way higher. If it doesn't, then you fall back into the kind of the same range we've been in, on the low side, like 215, on the higher side, like 250, right? So above 250, you kind of break out of the lower end range, which is good. At the time of recording this video, Tesla is about $253 per share or so. So things are definitely looking good for Tesla, but not out of the clear by any means. It just does seem like headlines around trade are really starting to move in the right direction. So let me know your thoughts on all of this down below in the comment section. Ladies and gentlemen, have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.